Hello, and welcome to Season 12 of the Meet the Mancunian podcast, Social Impact Stories from Manchester. I'm your host, Deepa Thomas-Sutcliffe, and I'm so glad you're here today. This season, I'll be speaking with people who are driven by passion and guided by purpose. Individuals working in different ways to shape Manchester and strengthen our communities. In each conversation, we'll explore what motivates them, what keeps them going, and what impact their work is having across our city. These are honest human stories about why people care deeply about what they do. New episodes drop every Tuesday. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or on meetthemancunian.co.uk. Thank you for joining me. Let's meet this week's Mancunian guest. Passionate about channeling pain into purpose, we hear from Nicky Wake, founder of the Road Collective. In Nicky's own words,
sometimes when you're running a business, it feels like you're pushing water uphill. But with a mission-driven business with social impact, it can be easier. You just need to be brave enough to ask. And people find it much harder to say no to a not-for-profit than they do to a commercial organisation. So don't be afraid to leverage the heartstrings and emotions when making a request.
Thank you so much, Nicky, for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's a delight to be here.
Looking forward to hearing all about your latest passion project. First, tell us what sparked your passion for supporting the Manchester community.
I think community is actually at the heart of almost everything I do. I'm involved in numerous businesses, projects, and I think probably the one thing uniting that is community. I'm an incredibly social person. I'm all about building communities, connecting people together. I'm a huge believer in the sort of 6 degrees of separation theory. And I love joining the dots with people and making magic happen. And what happens when you put people in a room together, face to face. My very first foray into anything community related was within the LGBTQ community in Manchester. I worked as a naked podium dancer at the Paradise Factory, but also then became the club promoter. My job was to put on club night and bring people together in a celebratory fashion every weekend. I think almost the delight in community sparked from that very moment of realizing that magic happens when you unite people through a common interest in one place or online now. And exciting stuff happens. And I think I thrive on that social activity, if you like. My son often jokes that my social battery never wears down. He's one of those people who gets back from college and needs to go and decompress in his room. And that's alien to me. My social battery is charged by being around other people, and communities are a perfect place to do that.
Love that about magic being when people are brought together online or in person. And that's something really special about it. And thanks for sharing your fun fact into how your passion for community happened. And it's always interesting because guests have such varied backgrounds that It just makes it really special. So tell us about your journey with the Collective. How did that journey start? And was there a gap that you saw in the market or in the social impact sector? What made you step forward?
The Road Collective is born out of a very personal experience. Probably best if I share some of that journey that brought me to being widowed, which is why I started the Road Collective. So in 2017, I was literally living my best life. I was married to my soulmate, Nicky Wake. We'd met online back in the day in 2002, and we had a whirlwind romance. I fell head over heels in love. Thankfully, so did he. And fast forward 18 months, and we're stood on a beach in Jamaica, hand in hand, getting married in front of our closest friends and family. 3 years later, our beautiful baby boy burst into the world, and we became this perfect little nuclear family. I started an events company with Andy called Don't Panic. And I was flying around the world delivering glamorous award shows in posh frocks, literally having a wonderful time. Andy was the perfect stay-at-home dad. So he did every school walk. He cooked every meal. He kept the home fires burning. He was my rock, my soul, my foundation, my everything. And then in 2017, I returned from a business trip and I came home and Andy was very subdued. And I said, "What's wrong, babe?" And he He said, "Oh, I'm sure it's nothing, but I've got these chest pains." And he hadn't been to the doctors because he's a man and men don't go to the doctors, do they? So I dragged him to the doctors, 3 more visits to the doctors, and the doctor diagnosed stress. Now, Andy was the most laid back man in the world. He was horizontal. And I insisted they did an ECG, and it transpired he was having a heart attack. So he was blue lighted to hospital, went into theatre, had 3 stents fitted, recovered. I brought him home 3 days later, and we were toasting a lucky escape. We were going to make some lifestyle choices, things were going to change. He went to bed that night. I followed him to bed. He was snoring, and that's possibly the one thing I don't miss. And I slept in the spare room, secret to any happy marriage, as we all know. And then at 6 o'clock in the morning, I was awoken by a terrible sound. And I went in to our bedroom, and he was having another heart attack, only so much worse than the one before. And I did CPR for 40 long minutes, waiting for the ambulance to arrive. The ambulance arrived. I saved his life. He was rushed into ICU. He was put in an induced coma. And for 2 weeks, we began a bedside vigil of hopes and prayers, despite being atheists, clinging to any hope. And if life could be saved through Facebook likes and prayers, we'd have been fine, but it can't. And at 2 weeks, his consultant came to me and he said, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Wake, but your story doesn't have a happy end." And Andy had suffered a catastrophic brain injury. And that brain injury left him profoundly disabled. And he didn't know who he was, where he was. He couldn't walk, he couldn't talk. He required 24/7 round-the-clock care with a prognosis of no meaningful recovery. And so I was trying to solo parent almost a grieving child. If you think about it, Finn, our then 11-year-old, lost his daddy at that point. I was technically married, but emotionally widowed. And I lived in this horrible limbo land for 3 years of knowing that I was going to lose the love of my life, but not knowing when. And the love of my life was no longer the man I'd married. And he was in a very specialist nursing home requiring one-on-one, 24/7 specialist care, with literally no quality of life. And then in 2020, COVID hit the headlines, and I just knew that was the beginning of our end. And on the 17th of April, 2020, in the midst of lockdown, the nursing homes were closed at this point, I couldn't visit, and I got the call to say that Andy had died. And so, once again, my world fell apart, only this time in lockdown, when I didn't have the access to friends or family. I couldn't even get a hug from my dad. And it was the deepest and darkest of days that I'll ever remember. And I was struggling to survive while I was trying to navigate parenting a grieving child, navigate an events company through COVID when we couldn't deliver events. So I was facing heartbreak and bankruptcy nearly at the same time. And I sought solace in the wine rack, quite literally. And it was a very dark and challenging period in my life. But I did get some counselling signposted me to an incredible charity called Widowed and Young. And they help young widows, people who are widowed when they're under the age of 51, which I was technically just, actually. And what I do like about Widowed and Young is once you get in, they don't throw you out when you get to 51. So I will be forever young in that sense. So I quite like that as a side. And Widowed and Young became my lifeline. The strength of help and love in the widowed community, right? And I tapped into that and I lent into it, and I found my tribe of widow warriors who helped me rebuild my life and helped me get through this.
Thank you so much for sharing your very tragic story and how that pain you've been able to channel into purpose and using some of your life experience to help the widowed community. You share a little bit about the change that you're trying to make, and you're trying to give community to people in their darkest moments or many years on, depending on which life stage they're at. What does success look like for you? How do you see Widowed Collective? I know it's just started this year, but looking ahead, can you tell me what that might look like?
What I realized at that point, that millions of widows, in fact, 3.12 million people are widowed currently in the UK. And I would say 75%, 80% of those are over 51. And there wasn't a not-for-profit or a charity to help those people, which is a huge void. I knew because of the help and benefits I got through Widowed and Young that I needed to do something to make a difference. I needed to make a change. What I'm passionate about is not letting tragedy define me and turning that pain into purpose and creating something tangible and beautiful. And it helps me, if I can help other people find solace or joy or hope, that helps me make sense of my loss. That helps me understand why I lost Andy in the grand scheme of plan of whatever the reason is that we're all here. It gives meaning to my loss. And so I started the Widowed Collective. Also, another opportunity, which was in creating a dating app for widows and widowers. So I was already very connected within the widow community and had a database of widows and widowers that I built for commercial reasons. Commercial reasons will only fill so much of my heart. There's a big part of me that didn't just want to financially benefit from the widow community, that actually saw that as a widow, I could do so much more. And I needed to do so much more to help that widow community. Yes, I was touching people through my dating app at a certain part in their widow journey, but actually there are so many people, early stage widows, who needed so much more help and support in a very different vehicle than that of a dating app. And there were people older or people who'd chosen not to date who also needed the help and the community. And I thought there's something bigger I need to be doing here that is beyond just a commercial dating app. And I used that knowledge, those contacts, my ability to build communities to set up a not-for-profit, which we set up earlier this year, called the Widowed Collective. And we are open to widows of all ages, all genders. So by widow, we mean someone who's lost a life partner. You don't have to have been married. We are completely and utterly inclusive. It really doesn't matter what your sexuality is, whether you've had children or not children. Anyone who is grieving a life partner is welcome to join the Widowed Collective, and membership will always be free. As widows, we've paid the highest price for admission to this club, and we do not need to pay it. And so we're funded entirely by donations or by grants or by funding, and some personal funds that I've put in to kickstart the whole thing. And what is the Widowed Collective? It's UK-wide, and we have actually got some members who've joined from the US, so we will be starting a US contingent of it. Obviously centred in Manchester, where my heart is. I've been in Manchester for 30 years, feel as Mancunian as I come. And so we started our face-to-face first events in Manchester, but we will be UK-wide. We have an online forum, we have pages of resources, we have a WhatsApp group, we have a Facebook group, and we're looking for local volunteers across the UK to stand up and be advocates in their region, to host coffee mornings or yoga sessions or a country walk or whatever. I want to build a community from the ground up. So it's as much a question as what do the community want and need? But personally, I would love to see us have a chapter, if you like, in every town and city in the UK, led by a passionate individual. I think together we are stronger. I want to run a collective, not a dictatorship. I would like us to have thousands of members. I would like a vibrant program of events, both in person and online, that people can go to. I would like us to build funds through donations and grants to help widows and widowers who are struggling financially, because when you're widowed, you can lose half of the household income overnight. Some widows, are in the beneficial position of having had life insurance, so that in some ways that they may be more financially better off despite being emotionally devastated. But there are many widows where that's not the case. Had Andy been the main breadwinner and I had not had life insurance, there would be a huge financial issue and burden on me. So I would like eventually for us to be able to help people in those positions. I want it to be a thriving, inclusive community.
Sounds wonderful, and I do wish you many good things coming your way. Being member focused really helps because then you can evolve to their needs. So that sounds like a great place to start. What's been the toughest part of this journey
I know it's early days, but what does it take to set up this community? Is there something that you've had to overcome to successfully start?
I think I'm beneficial in the sense that I have run multiple businesses before, and I'm blessed with some very good business connections, and I'm known within the widowed community. So I think I've been lucky in the sense that I was well positioned to do this. I suppose the biggest challenge is hours in the day. I'm the founder of an events company, a dating app company, and also a sober not for profit organization. Hours in the day is always a challenge, and that ability to multitask between multiple projects is undoubtedly a challenge. I think the idea that finding the time to consult with the community and listen to the community, that is something that I need to instill in myself. It's so much easier to just do it your way, isn't it? And sometimes I need to remember the word collective within Widowed Collective, I think. And that's a mental note to myself.
Thank you for sharing that. When the work becomes really heavy or the progress is slow, as often happens when you're doing a passion project, what helps you stay motivated and hopeful?
I think this last 12 months has been transformational for me individually. I checked into rehab last November, and so I'm a year sober next week. And it's been a year of self care and prioritizing my health. So things like swimming and yoga and meditation is that perhaps weren't present in my life before I entered recovery have been really beneficial in helping me through those challenging times and helping me remain focused and driven. I swim 40 lengths every day, and routine is good. Again, asking for help. If you're doing something that is mission driven and with social purpose, invariably people will want to help you. It's much easier than when you're trying to run a business. Sometimes when you're running a business, it feels like you're pushing water uphill. But with mission driven, with social impact, it can be easier. You just need to be brave enough to ask. And people find it much harder to say no to a not for profit than they do to a commercial organization. So don't be afraid to leverage the heartstrings and emotions when making a request.
Great advice. And I like that very much about that investment into self care, almost acting like a grounding ritual for yourself and
Yes,
giving you the energy you need for everything else.
you've got to look after yourself first to make sure you're doing the right thing for your community. And if you're not looking after yourself, then you're not in the best place to serve that community that you so desperately want to.
For you and your mission, what can we look forward to in the next few months?
Yeah. World domination, I think, we're very much in the embryonic stages of the collective. We've literally launched the full membership website only a few weeks ago. So building that membership is critical. Expect to see me all over the UK, popping up, speaking at events, taking. I'm looking and hoping to create partnerships with people who can signpost to those collectives. My next approach is to someone like Co Funeral Care to see if they would support by having literature and posters within their undertakers' storefronts, being the front line where people are at the very early stages of widowhood, so that we're there as a resource. And I think that's a big job for me to do through partnerships. So anyone who can help with any of that, please do reach out to me. There's a contact form on our website. Also, very important that I can't do this alone. I would like to recruit an army of advocates. So they would, in my mind, be later stage widows. So widows who've been through that initial raw grief and have some lived experience as a widow and have walked those paths and know the challenges ahead. So ideally, people who've been widowed 3 to 5+ years, I would suggest would be better placed to help those in the early stages of widowhood. And ideally, we'd be looking for widows of all ages and all genders and all backgrounds. And we want to be diverse and inclusive. So anyone who feels they've got some time and they can give some skills, and those skills can be in anything. They can be organizing a coffee morning locally, or they could be lobbying government about bereavement support payment if they have legal backgrounds, or they could offer to step up and be our treasurer, or they could help with fundraising. There are a million ways to get involved in a collective. And if you are a widow and you feel you have skills of any kind that you can help to bring to grow this crucial movement that is a not for profit, every penny that we raise will go back to help widows and widowers on the front line. We don't have offices or salaries or staff or any of those things. And we appeal to volunteers to step forward and help us.
What would you say is the impact you made?
I think our very first event that we held was a few weeks ago in a bar in central Manchester. And it was interesting because I run widow dating events for my dating business. And we often find it quite hard to find men to come to those events. I think men are quite intimidated by going to a dating event. The collective event that we had, we actually have more men than we did women. So I think for me, that was really refreshing to see that the men felt that they could come to something that was much more community based and feel comfortable. And at one point I looked over and there were 12 guys all stood around chatting that would never have known each other in real life. And those men will be going down the pub or going to the golf club or whatever it is they do and hanging out with friends who are happily married and still in their relationships and feeling incredibly isolated. And if I can create a safe space for those men to come together and meet other men who are going through the same journey and the same experiences and make those connections, and just seeing those guys swap numbers and knowing that they will keep in touch and they will meet for a pint and they'll go to the football or whatever it is that guys do. I walked away from that night feeling like I'd achieved something. There were people there who felt like they'd lost their place in society. Every aspect of your life changes. Your friends group change. The way you holiday changes. The way you live changes. Your finances change. The way you parent changes. The way you cook changes. Widowhood touches every aspect of your life in a way that you cannot imagine until it happens to you. And I think if we can just help change some of, even at the smallest level, then we're having an impact.
I love that about like creating a kind of bond because people have shared lived experiences which can connect them in different ways from people who don't have that lived experience. When you think about listeners who want to help and don't know how, what can individuals do to make a difference in a simple, everyday way? It may not be for supporting widowers, it could be for just building community. What actions can they take?
I think it's about stepping up, isn't it? And putting yourself forward in whatever community that you are in and you want to touch and engage. We all have the ability to make a difference. And it's finding something that you're passionate about. So if you are widowed, then, reach out and join our collective. If you're in a community that needs its own collective, then step up and do that. Reach out, walk into a charity shop and volunteer. If we all, as individuals in society, said to ourselves a commitment of 4 hours a week, I'm going to do something for a community, and find a community that resonates with you. Because if you're going to stick to something, you've got to love it, right? And make that commitment, make that your January New Year's resolution or whatever it is. And for 4 hours a week, do some good. Because actually the karma that comes back from that and the feel good feelings that you get way outweigh the time and the effort that you put in. And I've found being in both this and the sober community I'm involved with incredibly rewarding. And it's lovely to go to bed thinking you've made a difference.
Love that very much because, like you said, it could be volunteering, it could be joining or supporting a cause. But it's true, it's so important to choose a cause that really matters to you. So, over a period, I know my causes, they are animal welfare and inclusion, and I tend to work in those areas. But there have been times before that when I volunteered on a variety of causes because I want to, give my skills for good, but they don't help you see the impact of what you're doing. It's just an additional resource at that time. So I think I really like that about the advice that find your cause and then commit to making a difference in that cause. Is there something about your work or the voluntary sector that you might want more people to understand?
Oh, for me, I would like to understand the reality of widowhood and what that means. Unfortunately, if you're in a marriage, one of two things is going to happen. You're going to die or your partner's going to die. The odds of that happening on the same day at the same time are pretty slim. And so it is important that as individuals, we understand being widowed. It does affect every single area of your life. To just stop and think about that. And then when you do meet widows, not to be afraid. Do you know what this is? I love it when people talk about Andy. I think people, when they know I'm a widow, sort of don't know what to say. And they're very shy about them mentioning him or referring to him. We've got friends who don't even know what's the right thing to do. Do I mention him? Do I not mention him? Let's talk about it. Because through talking about other people's late partners, you keep their memories alive. I can't hurt any more than I'm hurting about the loss of Andy. You mentioning his name is not going to hurt me more than I'm hurt. What it will do is make me think, he touched your life. You remembered him, right? And you were remembering him now. And to me, that's beautiful. And so that's the thing. It took me a while to get there, but that's what I want to drill in on is just because we lose someone physically, we don't lose them emotionally in our hearts, and we should talk about them and celebrate them and remember them often.
Absolutely. That is really good advice. And I guess something for listeners to just think about when they support people, friends, family who may have gone through this, or if they're going through this themselves, that cherish that memory of the partner who's gone, or the friend who's gone, or a family member who's gone, because that's how you keep their memory alive. And that's how you keep them alive in a way.
Yeah.
Is there a community partnership or act of kindness that inspired you lately that you might want to talk about?
I think probably my biggest inspiration came from the work that Widowed and Young did. That was certainly what gave me the idea. When I realized, because I was trying to signpost widows from my dating app, and I didn't have anywhere to signpost them to because they were over 51. And I was speaking to a lady at an event who was 52. And I'm like, this is ridiculous that at 52, she can't access help and services. 52 is still really young. And I know Widowed and Young, because of its definition and its mission, has to have a cutoff point somewhere. You're as young as you feel and all that. They do need a cutoff point. And so I guess that was the inspiration, was realizing that all of a sudden there was a problem that there wasn't a solution to. And this was my mission, to create the solution to that problem.
I love that it inspired you, but also then led you to think about, like, how can you take it further and how can you support a wider spread of people? I'm now going to move us, Nikki, to the signature questions I ask all my guests. If Manchester had a superpower, what would it be and where have you seen it in action?
It's back to the connection thing. I think what I love about Manchester is it's quite easy to be a big fish in a small pond. I go to London and I don't know people and I haven't got those connections. Whereas in Manchester, I joke that I love the 6 degrees of separation rule, that you can get to anybody through 6 people, 6 connections. In Manchester, it's 3 connections. And that's what I love about Manchester and its superpower, is its connectivity. And I can get to Andy Burnham if I need to by talking to 3 people. There is a way of doing that. You just have to choose the right 3 people, obviously. But its connectivity and its vibrance, I think, is also its superpower. Do you know what? My favourite city is Manchester. And it is. It genuinely is. I love this city. This city has made me everything I am. From dancing on a podium in the Hacienda to running a community group for widows. And every flavour of Nicky in between has happened in this city. And I don't think I'd be the same woman if I'd done it in a different city. So I have a huge love for this city, and it's super.
I love that about both vibrancy and connectivity. The reason I've spoken to so many guests is, as a brand new person, is because my guests do this amazing kind thing of introducing me to new guests. And that's how I go into really interesting areas, such as with yourself. If you could gift Manchester one new value, habit, or mindset, what would you choose to strengthen community life here?
I joke, and it's not a value, but the one thing that Anthony H. Wilson, God rest his soul, founder of Mr. Manchester and the Hacienda and all of those things, said the only thing this city is missing is a beach. And I still stand by that, actually. We would be Barcelona if we had a beach. And I don't know if that's a value, but I'll have it if I'm allowed to.
If
Yes.
that's the one you want, then absolutely. I like the sea, so I can do an upvote on that little petition. We just
I
need
would,
to talk to
maybe
Mother Nature. If you could have a 10-minute conversation with a community hero from Manchester's past or present, who would it be with and what would you ask them?
it would be Anthony Wilson, Mr. Manchester, music, hacienda. I was blessed to Anthony. I wouldn't say very well, but he came to my house a couple of times. And sadly, he died some time ago. And he was a fabulous raconteur. And he was a great community builder and a dreamer and an idealist. I would ask Anthony his thoughts on the development of Manchester and how it's become a very different Manchester to the one that he was part of. And is that for the good or not? The thoughts on how the city's developed in the past 10 years. And I would be intrigued as to what he made of it.
Definitely. I've heard so much about Hacienda and its influence on the Manchester music scene.
Yeah.
And it's sad that it's just apartments now. Like
Yes,
you said.
yes. It's, I know.
Looking back, what's a life lesson or a piece of wisdom that your journey has taught you, something you carry with you every day?
I think that grief and death isn't the end of everything. It can be the start of a new chapter. It's taught me is I thought my world was over and my life had ended. And actually, what I didn't realize was it was the universe turning a page for me. And I had a different story to write than the one I was in. And it's very hard when you're in the depths of despair to believe in hope and to believe that there can be light after darkness, but there can. And there is. You've just got to find that reason for being again and that reason for meaning.
And it's beautiful. Like you said, grief can be devastating. After a point, you work through it and you find that new chapter or new direction and new purpose. It's really beautiful. I hope that's a thought listeners can take away with them as they think about their own journey. What's the best way for listeners to connect with you, support your mission, or learn more?
The first port of call will be our website, which is theactive.com. And you can sign up for free there, or you can just join our mailing list if you're not ready to sign up. And you can contribute on our forums. You can access our resources, regardless of whether you're a member or not. You can follow us on Facebook. We're on Insta. All of the links are on the website. So just click through and follow us there. We will always follow you back, I promise. You can join one of our online meetings, or you can join one of our in-person meetings. And then we have a WhatsApp group that you can sign up to too.
Thanks, Nikki, for sharing all of that. Great to talk to you. This is all we have time for, but I think it's been a really interesting conversation. And thank you for sharing your very difficult journey, but what you're making of that new chapter in life.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for listening to the Meet the Mancunian Social Impact Stories from Manchester. If today's episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who believes in the power of passion and purpose, or leave a review to help others discover the podcast. You can connect with me on social media at the rate Meet the Mancunian on Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky, and at the rate Meet the Mancunian podcast on YouTube. I'm Deepa Thomas-Sutcliffe, and I'll be back next Tuesday with another story from the people shaping Manchester. Next week, we hear from Sebastian Linares talking about sustainability and food insecurity. Until then, thank you for listening and for being part of this community.